This Council resumes the second reading debate on the Electoral Legislation Miscellaneous Amendments Bill 2025. Mr. Lai Tong-kwok, Chairman of the Bills Committee on the bill, will first address the Council on the committee's report. Mr. Lai Tong-kwok. President, the bill seeks to amend the Electoral Affairs Commission Ordinance and the Chief Executive Election Ordinance and relevant subsidiary legislation to ensure the smooth conduct of the ECSS Election Committee subsector by elections and the Legis general election to be held later this year. The Bills Committee held 2 meetings and invited written submissions from the public. Members in general supported the bill and agreed that the administration should ensure that on the premise of the elections would be conducted in a fair, honest, safe, and orderly manner, electoral arrangements should be improved to enhance efficiency. On the bill's proposal to remove the connection between the delineation of LegCo GC's geographical constituencies and DC District Council constituencies, members noted that with improved district governance and the reforming of DCs in 2023, the delineation of LegCo GCs no longer had direct connection with the DC constituencies. Members were supportive of the proposal as it would help enhance flexibility of the delineation of boundaries. Members also suggested that the administration should maintain consistency between the two as far as practicable to make it easier for electors to identify their constituencies and for member service of districts. The administration advised that subject to the passage of the bill by LegCo, the EAC Electoral Affairs Commission would draw up recommendations on the boundaries and names of JCs in accordance with the amended legislation and launch a 30-day public consultation. If there are changes in the arrangements for constituencies, the EAC will step up publicity among the electors concerned. Members expressed support for the bill to empower the EAC to use counting machines while retaining manual counting for the counting of votes in the LegCo FC functional constituency elections, and consolidate the ballot paper accounts to enhance efficiency of the counting of votes and reduce the manpower needed and related expenditure. On development and procurement of the counting machine system, members were concerned about how the EAC would decide on a computer software to be adopted as the approved program for the counting machines. Members also expressed concern about the technical stability, security, and accuracy of the counting machines and urged the administration to formulate a comprehensive risk management and contingency mechanism and conduct adequate testing to ensure that the system was effective and reliable and that fallback arrangements could be activated immediately should issues arise. According to the administration, the EAC and the REO Registration and Electoral Office have put in place system security arrangements under a 3-tier confirmation mechanism for the development and procurement of the election-related mission-critical systems and have set up the Mission-Critical System Development and Maintenance Board to set out comprehensive testing requirements. Rigorous testing will be conducted and contingency plans formulated, including the provision of adequate backup counting machines and resorting to manual counting of votes where necessary. Members discussed in detail the practical aspects of the use of counting machines, including how to instruct electors to mark their ballot papers correctly and how to handle invalid ballot papers or ballot papers which cannot be read by the counting machines due to other problems. Given that ballot papers would no longer be sorted by constituency before counting, members were concerned whether the counting machines could accurately count ballot papers by FCs, and whether there would be a mechanism for verification of results and recounting of ballot papers. According to the administration, the procedures involving the use of counting machines adopted in the ECSS elections before worked well and would continue to be adopted. In addition, the use of counting machines for vote counting technically eliminates the need for a manual sorting of ballot papers and will automatically and accurately calculate the number of votes obtained by each candidate and results by FCs. The administration stressed that the electoral staff would perform their duties in compliance with relevant electoral legislation, and the EAC would continue to issue directives or provide guidance as circumstances warrant. Regarding the timing for deciding whether or not counting machines would be used for counting votes in the Electoral FC elections to be held at the end of this year, the administration advised that it would decide whether or not to use counting machines in the elections after evaluating the reliability and accuracy of the system as well as the test results, and would announce as early as possible the relevant practical arrangements and guidelines and step up publicity. Regarding the arrangements for the publication of the register of voters for subsectors, members supported the proposal in the bill to empower the ERO, Electoral Registration Officer, to advance the date for the compilation and publication of the provisional register and final register by notice published in the Gazette in the year of electoral general election, so as to enable by-elections to be conducted on the basis of an up-to-date register. Members expressed concern as to how the changes in the ex officio membership of the election committee would be followed up on in a timely manner. The administration advised that it would take the initiative to contact the relevant organizations to remind them to submit a registration form to the REO in a timely manner after there was a change in the person holding a specified position. In the light of the two elections to be held later this year, members urged the administration to step up its efforts in encouraging the public to vote. At the same time, the administration should focus on explaining to the public the institutional advantages established under the improved electoral system, including the implementation of the principle of patriots administering Hong Kong through improved composition of electoral and enhanced functions of the EC, Election Committee, and the promotion of good governance and raising of governance efficacy, thereby enhancing public understanding and acceptance of the improved electoral system and more effectively promoting civic participation. The Bills Committee completed scrutiny of the bill. At the suggestion of the legal advisor to the Bills Committee, the administration proposed a technical amendment to the bill. Members of the Bills Committee support the amendment proposed by the administration. President, the following are my personal views on the bill. There are three main parts to the amendments. 1. Making revisions in relation to the delineation of GC boundaries for electoral general elections before there were 400 DC constituencies, and making sure there are two contiguous whole boundaries. It was relatively easy to make sure there are constituencies, but since the improved electoral system was implemented in 2023, we now only have 40 odd DC constituencies. It would be hard to have two or more contiguous whole DC constituencies forming a electoral geographical constituency. The amendments are to provide flexibility. It will not completely decouple the electoral GCs and district council GCs, and according to the secretary, even if we divide up the territory into 18 districts, it would still be linked in some way to the electoral GCs. There will not be significant changes. The secretary also pledged that should there be changes, there will still be a certain degree of linkage between electoral GCs and DC constituencies. I urge the administration to make sure there is no confusion in the differences in delineation of boundaries for the electoral GCs and district council constituencies. I also urge the administration to understand while electors should vote in their specific constituencies, it is also important to make sure it is convenient for voters to vote in the respective polling stations. And if electors find out late that their polling stations have changed from previous years, it may be too late for them to vote. So I urge the relevant authorities to remind electors early on if there are any changes. For the use of counting machines, I think embracing technology to enhance accuracy is definitely appreciated, and the technology is already at its mature stage. It is not by any means advanced. Unfortunately, in recent elections, we have observed technical failures. In 2021, in the ECSS elections, there were some problems with the counting machine. There were also other failures. So the counting was supposed to be done midnight that day. It was only done in the morning of the coming day. And in 2023, there was a problem with the CBR system, the register system. But in the experience of those campaigning, it has hurt the candidates' voter turnout. Say, for those serving public housing estates, they would have to still campaign late at night in public housing estates, but for those serving private housing estates, they cannot do that. I'm raising this issue because there will always be unexpected circumstances. While we do want to conduct adequate testing in the form of stress tests to make sure the operations of the counting machines will be smooth, we also need to make sure there is adequate training to electoral staff to deal with any possible scenario. There are some long-term impacts of the legislative amendments. The EAC will be empowered to use counting machines in FC elections. If the counting machines do not perform well, we have to resort to manual counting. And we have for the district elected members a higher number of votes, and we will be using counting machines for such elections. But this will only happen in the next election with the use of counting machines. So we need to ensure the success of counting machines used in this FC election so that in future elections we can also use counting machines with the higher number of votes in such elections. With the use of counting machines, the Secretary said we should need less manpower. With less manpower, and that can be half of the manpower needed right now. And in 2021, the Legis general election, the staffing expenditure cost $236 million. If we can use counting machines fully in elections, not only are we keeping up with the digital era, it can save significant costs for the government. I speak in support of the bill. Thank you.
Mr. Kenneth Lau. President, I support the passage of the electoral legislation Miscellaneous Amendments Bill 2025. On the 7th of December this year, the electoral elections will be held. The EC constituency by-election will be held on the 7th of September. To ensure these two elections are successful, as the representative of the Heung Kok, I support the government's efforts. I support this bill, meaning I also support the use of vote counting machines and also the new approach with the ballot paper account, and because we will see a shorter time needed for vote counting. Now, for the functional constituency, the vote counting arrangement is complicated. Let's look at the last term election. First, the officers had to move the ballots from the ballot stations to the central counting station. They then opened the ballot boxes and then they had to group the ballots by constituency, and then they had to count the number of ballots. There were 28 functional constituencies, 17,000 votes. It took 12 hours to go through the entire vote counting process. At 10 a.m. the following day, the results came out. Progress was slow, the work was inefficient. And that also made it very hard for the polling staff and journalists. That also was a poor look for Electoral. Now we're using vote counting machines. This is actually nothing new. Starting from 1998, the registration and the electoral office has been using these machines for election committee elections. 2021, at the ECC election, each voter of the EC constituency had to choose 40 candidates. The vote counting process was time-consuming and complex. Using machines made the process smoother. The election outcome was available at 2:24 a.m. the following day. The work was done faster than the FC counting. But at the ECC election, there were problems with the electronic vote counting machines, such as jammed machines and also staff unfamiliar with the work process. So I hope the relevant parties can learn from past experience and improve the approach the way forward. The government has made a promise. If the voting machines break down, there will be backup machines, and when the machines do not work, there will be manual counting to make sure the vote counting continues and there will be no delay in the announcement of the election outcome. To make vote counting faster, the best way to go is to put vote counting machines at the district-based polling stations. We still have technical problems to sort out, such as technical reliability and data transfer. Once the technology is more well established, I hope that we can apply machine-based vote counting across the board, and that will bring greater efficiency and there will be greater transparency. That will also reduce the need for manpower and bring down election-related expenses. The bill also proposes amendments in two other areas. In 2021, we improved the electoral system for Legis, and 2023, we improved the system for district councils. So now, when you look at the geographical constituencies, the GCs for Legis and the GCs for DCs are no longer linked to one another. So I support removing this link. And there is also an arrangement for the register for the ECC. That's to allow the by-election to proceed based on the latest register. This is a step taken in light with the changing circumstances. Now, for the use of vote counting machines for the functional constituency of the upcoming electoral election, the machines will bring greater efficiency, and this will also meet the public need for faster results of the election. I hope the government will rigorously select the contractor for the machine. Let's get the testing right. And we should be approaching the relevant parties and the candidates in those functional constituencies. Let's tell them how the machines will work to ensure that when the December elections come, the elections will be held in an open, fair, and honest way. President, I so submit. I support the passage of this bill. Professor Priscilla Leung. President, I support the Electoral Legislation Miscellaneous Amendments Bill 2025. I was a member of the Bills Committee with good governance, we are introducing this enhancement measure. In 2021, our electoral system was improved. So now, Legco's geographical constituencies number 10 across the territory. I served as a district councillor for 13 years. At the DC level, there were 452 geographical constituencies for DCs. And then we improved the district level governance system. Now there are 44 DCGCs instead. In the past, people struggled to vote for DCs and Legco. It was all confrontation and adversarial in the past, but now things have improved. This bill proposes to remove the link between LCGCs and DCGCs. So now we are introducing more flexibility. I see this as an enhancement. That's why I support this. The second key point under this bill is enhancing the vote counting process. We have been calling for a smart government. So this step is only a minor step in the overall exercise. We must take that first step. So I support the direction of this measure. At the last district council election, I was in Shek Kip Mei. I was there. When something went wrong in the electoral process, people panicked. People wanted to vote for the candidate they had in mind. So I put this question to the government time and again during the BC's deliberations. I'm happy with the government's response. So we should have learned from the experience of that episode, and we should also have a set of backup machines. When the first set of machines break down, you have the second set of machines to fall back on. And when push comes to shove, you have officers ready to do manual counting. There were divergent views at the BC. Some argued for fewer officers, others argued for backup officers. We're simply trying out these vote counting machines for the first time. We should play safe. Sure, getting officers there costs money. But that shouldn't cost too much. I experienced what happened in Shek Kip Mei. I want to stay safe. Now, when we had the district council election, the machine broke down. Interference from the outside was ruled out, but again, let's stay on safe ground. I support testing this out. I support taking the first step. Now, the third amendment has to do with the register. We're empowering an officer, the registration and electoral officer, to move the date so that the ECC election can happen. Now, on this register, we have elected and ex officio members. Candidates may have a hard time approaching organizations who are voters. So I have been calling for an approach where you set a deadline. I know the REO said it has been doing checking and has told its voters to let others know when there are changes. But there should be a deadline, say within a month or 2 weeks. That will make life easier for everyone. I support the bill I so submit.
Mr. Chan Siu-hong. Thank you, President. I speak in support of the Electoral Legislation Miscellaneous Amendments Bill 2025 and the amendment proposed by the administration. The bill seeks to amend the relevant legislation for the smooth conducting of the 2 elections to be held later this year. I would like to speak on 3 areas. First, on the delineation of GC boundaries for electoral general elections. We're removing the statutory connection between the electoral GCs and DC constituencies. Since the improvement in electoral system in 2021, we now have 10 electoral GCs. And since the district governance and the reforming of district councils improvement in 2023, we now have 40 odd DC constituencies. Before, we had to make sure each proposed GC would be constituted by 2 or more contiguous whole DC constituencies. But with the change in DC constituencies, it may be difficult to link the 2 now, and it may cause confusions to electors and candidates. With the proposed removal of the statutory connection between electoral GCs and DC constituencies, this would work to offer more flexibility, but I think there should still be some consistency between the DC constituencies and electoral GCs so as to facilitate district councillors and electoral member service of districts. I hope that as far as practicable, the administration should have a level of consistency between the 2. The next area that I want to talk about is, while retaining manual counting if necessary, we will empower the use of counting machines. Counting machines were only used in EC elections before. The FC and GC elections had still the manual counting, and for the 70,000 votes, it took 12 hours to count. I understand the administration has to consider different factors in the process. I think we can refer to previous successful experience and introduce the use of counting machines in FC elections. It is a prudent approach because we have already referred to the successful experience. We are concerned, however, there may be differences in the marking of ballot papers with the different approaches. I urge the government to announce early on the relevant arrangements in order for candidates and electors to be familiar with the electoral arrangements. I also asked the administration earlier whether we will develop an entirely new system for the FC elections or make use of an existing system with some upgrades. The administration does not rule out any possibility, as said in their reply. But I think they need to make sure there is a risk management and contingency mechanism in place. In the 2021 election, the counting machine failed technically, and in the 2023 election, there was a problem with the electronic poll register system. Members were concerned if the counting machines failed again, whether there would be backup plans. The administration said they would engage a reputable operator for the development of the system. They would also conduct adequate testing and formulate contingency plans. Apart from the primary counting machine, there would be a backup counting machine. And if the backup counting machine fails as well, they would resort to manual counting. And if we are to fill in ovals on ballot papers, it may be more difficult for manual counting. We need to make sure we take into account if we are to resort to manual counting. In the end, it may actually increase the time for counting. For the filling in of ovals, I believe there were no major disputes before, but I would like to remind the administration we have a high number of electors for FC elections. For the 8 voters, it may be hard for them to fill in ovals on ballot papers. On the third area, on the advancement of compilation and publication dates for registers. And according to Section 14 of the Chief Executive Election Ordinance and the relevant Election Committee, Affairs Commission Ordinance, the Electoral Registration Officer should publish the relevant registers by September. And if there are any vacancies, the relevant officer must conduct the subsector by elections in advance of electoral general election to fill the vacancies in the election committee. And this is what is happening this year in September, so that the vacancies will be filled before the electoral general election on 7th of December this year. As the ECSS subsector register would remain valid until the next register is published. So for the ECSS by-elections held on 7th of September this year, without the legislative amendments, we would have to rely on an updated register. So I support the legislative amendments to have the dates of compilation and publication of the provisional register and final register advanced so that we can have an up-to-date register. I think the powers are limited in the sense that it would only be done in the years of electoral general election. I think we should disseminate more information on the vacancies in election committee. Right now, we can only see the last updated information on 30th of November 2023. Now we're in April 2025. Candidates and the general public are not aware of whether there are in fact vacancies on the election committee. How can the candidates even prepare for campaigning? And I also note that we are 3 months away from the start of the campaigning period, and there will be 3 months between the September election and the December election. Will there be more vacancies on the election committee within the 3 months, and will there be any changes in official membership? I hope the administration will take these into account. The administration also said between the period of the September election and December election, no further by-elections would be held. I therefore urge the administration to publish any updates to enhance understanding of candidates and the public on the latest situation. Thank you. Mr. Chen Chen-ying, the 8th electoral general election will be held on 7th of December this year. The ECSS by-elections 7th of September. For the smooth conducting of the 2 elections, the government proposed 3 areas of legislative amendments. I speak in support of them. First of all, we will remove the connection between electoral GCs and DC constituencies. Other members have spoken on this. I will not repeat what they said here. I do appreciate the amendment, however. And we are also empowering the EAC to use counting machines in FC elections, as well as to consolidate the ballot paper accounts. In the 2021 Electoral general election, there were complexities in the FC election. Much of the process was manual. And for the 70,000 votes, as said earlier, it took 12 hours to complete the counting process. I actually personally experienced this in the financial sector. We only had 100 odd votes, and it was the early morning of next day that the counting was completed. It really shocked me. I understand that that was because of the time needed for verification of ballot paper accounts and the shuffling of votes to the central counting station. I hope that with these barriers removed through the legislative amendments, it should enhance efficiency. But like other members who have spoken, I would urge the administration to prepare for any technical failures. And in fact, they should prevent technical failures from happening to prevent the fact that they would give a wrong impression that whenever we make use of new technologies, there would be some problems. I also know that there would be an advancement of the dates of compilation and publication of the registers of voters for subsectors, so that whenever it is the year of electoral general election, dates can be advanced for the smooth conducting of the elections. In 2021, we improved the electoral system. In 2023, we improved district governance and reformed the DCs. 5 elections have been held since then. We should refer to the experience we learned before, and we have introduced advanced technologies. I believe we would have future elections held in a smoother manner. But I also note in my observations that the election committee had to select 40 people from the membership, and if one has voted more than that or less than that, the ballot paper would be deemed invalid. And 40 is not exactly an easy number, and when I voted, I need to verify multiple times whether I have marked only 40 ovals to make sure the ballot papers are valid. And I think many electors had the same experience. I think there should be a function to verify whether 40 candidates have been selected on a ballot paper. I think we can have a smart counting function of the counting machines to help EC electors verify whether they have selected 40 candidates. And we also talked about having smart ballot boxes. And it has been controversial. But I think going smart should start with when one enters a polling station, before we need to manually verify the identities of voters and issue the ballot papers. In future, if we can swipe our ID to verify our identities, it would be more convenient. Of course, that would incur some costs, and we would need to use perhaps more forms of technology. But I think on the premise of ensuring personal privacy, we should be able to streamline this further and save costs. I hope that in future we will have some breakthroughs so that we can go even smarter in elections. Deputy President, I speak in support of the bill and the amendment proposed by the administration.
Dr. Martin Liao. Mr. Deputy, this is the last year of this term of Legislative Council. The general elections will be held on the 7th of December. As for the vacancies of the EC subsectors, by-elections will be held on the 7th of September 2025. And since the improvement to the electoral system in 2021, we have had 5 major elections. And yet, in the process, we ran into certain hiccups, such as protracted ballot counting process and errors with the voters register. In relation to these matters, an amendment bill is now tabled, drawing on the previous experience. Enhancements will be proposed to ensure smooth conduct of the 2 elections. Now, the ERO is empowered under the bill to use ballot counting machines to count ballots in the upcoming Legis FC elections. In fact, I've had this experience when it comes to various elections in the central, held by the Central People's Government. Ballot counting has always been done electronically without major error. The SAR government likewise has discussed deploying technology in local elections. For the EC Electoral General Election, EC election of electoral and subsector elections, likewise we adopted the ballot counting electronically with machine. However, because of the errors I mentioned, there should be sufficient tests for the systems, and there should also be backup plans. According to the administration, if something goes wrong with the ballot counting machines, there will be backup machines, or ballot counting will be done manually. It's worth noting that time taken could be more than the traditional manual counting method. I hope that the whole process can be conducted smoothly. Now, in relation to the FCs of LCGEs, in the past, a lot of manpower and time was spent because before the ballot boxes arrived at the central counting stations, in the separate ballot paper accounts will have to be prepared, and then ballot counting will be conducted separately for each and every FC. Now, the amendment bill provides that instead of having separate ballot paper accounts, consolidated BPAs can be introduced to streamline the counting process. I believe this arrangement will greatly shorten the time and efforts needed in going through all the ballot paper accounts, and we can also give play to the merit of a centralized counting method. The bill also proposes removing the connection between delineation of GC boundaries for LCGEs and DC constituencies. Now, since the implementation of the improved electoral system in 2021, the original 452 DC constituencies have been merged into 44 geographical constituencies having regard to the characteristics of different districts. Now, as for the as for the LC geographical constituencies, they are delineated on the basis of population quota. These 2 approaches are vastly different, so I agree with removing the connection. Mr. Deputy, at the moment, the final voters register is published on the 25th of September. Now, the by-elections for EC subsectors will be held on the 7th of September, and before publishing the final, most updated register, the elections will have to be carried out on the basis of the register published in the previous year. This may affect the impartiality of the election and the electioneering campaign of candidates. Now, the bill proposes that by publishing a notice in the Gazette, the ERO may advance the dates of compiling and publishing the provisional register and the final register. so that relevant candidates will have an update on the voters' situation. And on the whole, I support the bill and the amendments. I so submit. Dr. Tichiyun. President, I speak in support of the electoral legislation miscellaneous amendment bill. There are 3 parts to the bill. First, technical revisions in relation to the delineation of LC geographical constituency boundaries. The connection with the DC constituencies will be removed. The second relates to enhancing the counting procedures for FCs. That means ballot counting machines may be used for functional constituencies. The third part relates to technical amendments. First, in relation to removing the connection between LC geographical constituencies and the DC geographical constituencies, I think this is only right that it be done. Basically, in the past, GC of Legis includes contiguous whole DC constituencies. There are 3 to 4 of them. Now there are only 10. The LCGCs and the number of DC constituencies have dropped from 452 to 44 geographical constituencies. So technically, there is a need to remove the connection between the delineation of GC boundaries for electoral and DC constituencies. This is an enhancement measure. Now, I want to emphasize, Mr. Deputy, however, that according to the previous practice, the delineation is such that some district councils will be able to focus on the local constituents. Yet after the amendment, there may be some ambiguities, and that it may need time for voters to learn about the new delineation in the voting process. Now, this is just a technical revision. I hope that the administration will address the concerns and avoid chaos. In the long run, the administration should also consider further improving the mechanism. The second part relates to using ballot counting machines for FCs. Hong Kong is an advanced city. We should harness technology to enhance efficiency and accuracy in the voting process. So this is another reasonable enhancement. However, in other countries and regions, ballot counting, electronic ballot counting is already a very mature technology. We will be left far behind if we still adopt a manual counting process. However, in the last electoral election, 12 hours were spent just to count 70,000 ballot papers. Ms. Alice Mack also expressed her fury as a candidate in that election. So this is late, but it's better than nothing. Now, in the process, we should introduce technology to enhance efficiency. But I want to remind the administration to be careful. Whilst leveraging on technology, we should make sure that we seek progress only when we are able to maintain stability. Otherwise, there will be major flops if we go for high-tech that are not mature, and Hong Kong will become a laughingstock. We need an open, fair, honest, and transparent electoral system in Hong Kong. Apart from the technical revisions, we also need to instill confidence in the general public so as to enhance the public acceptance of the election. Now, we will hold the 8th electoral general election on the 7th of December this year. We need to grasp the opportunity and enhance the efficiency and acceptance of the general elections. This is not an election. This is, in fact, part of the democratic system and part of the democratic process for members of the public to choose the lawmaker who can represent their voices under the spirit of inclusiveness. As part of a civic society, we don't think that a democratic system will be in conflict with good governance or development of society in general. Well, there is a need to hear these voices in a democratic manner. There should be different voices in this chamber so as to address the needs of different and interests of different parties. Now, the SAR government has a responsibility to create a favorable environment so that we can continue to promote democratic development in a pragmatic and peaceful manner in Hong Kong.
Dr. Lo Wai Kwok. Mr. Deputy, the BPA and I support the passage of the Electoral Legislation Miscellaneous Amendments Bill 2025. On the 7th of December this year, the elections will be held for the 8th Legislative Council. The ECC by-election will be held on the 7th of September. That's to fill the vacancies on the election committee so that they can cast their vote in December. And they can also nominate candidates for the electoral elections. This bill amends a number of pieces of legislation to make changes to electoral procedures, and these changes are warranted. I support the 3 groups of changes in the bill. 1, removing the link between LCGCs and DCGCs. In 2023, we improved district-level governance. There are now 44 DCGCs, down from 452. So there is no longer any need for any direct link between LCGCs and DCGCs. But some BC members and I believe that we should try to align the 2 kinds of geographical constituencies. That's to help people tell where the boundaries lie, and that will make it easier for people to get help. We should promote the new arrangements to voters so that they're aware of the new arrangement and they go to the right polling stations. The second group of changes have to do with the use of ballot counting machines for the functional constituency of the upcoming legislative elections. The government should make greater use of technology. Now, I have taken part in the functional constituency elections for the engineering sector. The time-consuming process in the vote counting has been tiring. There aren't that many votes, but we had to wait till noon the following day before we got the results. That makes little sense. Using counting machines will speed up the process. In the long run, that will also reduce the need for manpower and the expenses. The third change has to do with the register of EC voters. The ECC by-election will be held on the 7th of September this year. The bill proposes empowering the election registration officer to issue a notice in the Gazette in the year of the legislative election to put out the date for the final register. We have 1,500 people in the EC. When the membership changes, we should let people know early on. Say the person in charge of certain organizations have changed and someone else is taking on the responsibility. We should make changes accordingly. Now, for the by-election on September the 7th this year, I got some questions about whether there are vacancies. I can only tell these people they should refer to the register from last year, and then they have to guess where they can find vacancies. We should let people know these changes early on. Another point that requires clarification is that on the 7th of September, we will have the ECC by-election, but then 3 months later, on the 7th of December, you have the legislative elections. When there are changes to the ex officio members, shouldn't we be updating the register? I asked the government about this. When you see further vacancies in the EC between September the 7th and December the 7th, no by-election will be held. Now, when someone from the EC changes track and they try to become eligible member, they still have to go through the CERC Candidate Eligibility Review Committee. So we'll have to see if there are ex-officio members. If they are leaving their post and there are vacancies, we have to fill them. But you can only go that far with updating the list of EC voters. So we should be reaching out to the organizations on the list of EC voters. When there are changes in the membership, they should be filling out a form and sending it to the REO. The Secretary for Constitutional and Mainland Affairs will move an amendment. That's because the legal advisor to the Bills Committee made that suggestion. I support this amendment. Elections should be fair and impartial. We also need efficiency. The government should get it right with risk management. We need a contingency plan and response mechanism in place. Now, for the District Council election in 2023, the electronic poll register broke down. Ballots could not be issued. 2021, at the EC constituency election, the vote counting machines also failed. So we should learn from the experience. We should do everything we can to make sure we have reliable systems in place. When things go wrong, the backup systems should be activated right away. We have 2 important elections coming up. The government should step up publicity to raise awareness of the improved electoral system, and let's get more people to vote. Mr. Deputy, I so submit. I support the passage of the Electoral Legislation and Miscellaneous Amendments Bill 2025, and also the amendment to be moved by the Secretary for Constitutional and Mainland Affairs, Professor Chow Ming Kong. I support the Electoral Legislation Miscellaneous Amendments Bill 2025. The changes will help the 2 upcoming elections. There are 3 goals. 1, since we have improved the electoral system, we are enhancing the delineation of geographical constituencies. 2, improving the vote counting process. And 3, improving the arrangement about the register of voters for the ECC election. First, there will be greater flexibility to the delineation of FGCs for legislative elections. This bill proposes to remove the link between LCGCs and DCGCs. We're amending the relevant legislation. In 2023, we improved the district-level governance system. 44 DCGCs were put in place so that district councillors can take a more holistic view of district issues. District councillors can serve as a bridge between the local community and the government. That way, the government can deliver policies with greater success. 2 years into the current term of district councils, DC members have served the public. They have kept their finger on the pulse. They helped the government get a sense of what people think. So now the government is moving with the times. We're amending the legislation. LCGCs will no longer be linked with DCGCs. And then we can get patriots to help out in the administration of Hong Kong, and we can address people's pressing concerns. That way, the government can deliver more policies beneficial to the people, and people will access better services. LCGCs are important because they help the government find out what people think. So as we try to delineate LCGCs, let's get the public involved. That will help people understand the new system and get more people to take part. And we should learn from the practice from 2021. For the FC of the upcoming legislative election, we will adopt ballot counting machines. This will save manpower and ensure greater accuracy. This is a key step in our drive to become a smart city. A new proposed provision covers an approved program. Under the new arrangement, there will no more manual grouping of ballot papers by FC. The government has said that the vote counting for the FCs is the most complicated. The ballots go to the central counting station and then the ballots have to be grouped. It takes 12 hours before you count all the 70,000 ballots. Of course, technology is a double-edged sword. That's why we started in 2021, we started the vote counting machines for ECC election. And this time we are using machines for the FC, and we're taking things one at a time. I support this. And we should also be careful with the use of technology. Voters had to use a special pen from the government. The votes were also verified with optical character reading technology. So we should be using technology. As we protect our systems from cyber attacks, we should be improving our voting arrangements. Now, on the register of voters for the election committee, we're making changes so that the ERO can release the latest voters register. There are also new proposed provisions empowering the ERO to publish Gazette notices. Deadlines can be announced on the registers. I support this approach. Now, this register has a bearing on 4 kinds of people. As a member returned from the EC constituency, I'm one of those affected. Now, there are organizations involved in the EC. People responsible for those organizations change from time to time. The government should provide more effective channels for these 4 kinds of people: the chief executive, NPC delegates, EC members. We should make it easier for them to tell when people responsible for the organizations have changed. Only then you can stay close to people and implement this improved electoral system with patriots in control. I support the second and third reading of this bill.
Mr. Tang Fei, I speak in support of the Electoral Legislation Miscellaneous Amendments Bill 2025 and the amendment proposed by the administration. The amendments will help with the smooth conducting of the future elections. It was also tying in with the resolution adopted at the fourth session of the NPC. For the smooth conducting of future elections, the amendments are necessary. Not to mention, they will also tie in with the national strategy. Improving the electronic platform for voting is very important. Unfortunately, they will only be made applicable to the ECC and FC elections rather than to all elections, such as the district elected member elections, where there will be a higher number of electors and candidates. But I think we can draw on experience of electronic voting before. We have 80,000 electors in the education sector alone. It is actually a comparable number to the electors, the number of electors for the district elected members. And in fact, we have electors across the territory, so it can be quite complex for the functional constituency elections for the education sector. I think we can draw on the experience of this year's FC elections for future elections, especially for the education sector. It can be of great reference. For some FCs, there is a high number of electors. For the constituencies with lower number of electors, it may be easier to provide such services, but say for the education sector, it is a functional constituency with a high number of electors. We can definitely refer to the experience in the election of this constituency. And we are going digital. We should not be manually counting votes anymore. And unfortunately, we have yet to adopt fully electronic voting. I do understand caution being exercised by the administration, but I think it also shows that the government is slow in developing local systems, and they are not exactly confident in the companies developing such systems in Hong Kong. I think it's all about impressions. If the government does not show determination in going fully digital in elections, it may give a wrong impression in our development of INT. And as some other members said, or the secretary said himself, we are not making use of advanced technologies in elections here. It is not exactly the right move if we can't go fully digital. It does not work well to give off a good impression for the development of INT in Hong Kong. I hope that in future the administration can amend legislation further so that we can make use of counting machines and electronic voting and counting in other elections. I also understand there is a removal in the statutory connection between LegCo GCs and district council constituencies. I urge the administration to enhance publicity, to enhance understanding of candidates and the general public. It's not just about enhancing awareness, it is also about telling good stories of Hong Kong. We are implementing a central government policy of the improved electoral system. With the delineation of boundaries, there can be confusion or there may be malicious misinterpretation. I actually studied politics myself. There is a specific term for the confusion caused by the delineation of boundaries. So it is a thing. Right now, we did not deal with the accommodation of voters living in the mainland. We have many Hong Kong voters commuting between mainland and Hong Kong, and according to the figures of the 2023 District Council election, for those who have registered as a mainland voter, there are 12,000 odd of them. I'm not sure if all of them are working or studying. Right now, at the end, we have a voter turnout of approximately 9,900 odd voters. It's a high percentage out of a total number of registered mainland Hong Kong voters. And we need to take into account how highly motivated these voters are in voting, and we need to make sure we can accommodate that traffic in polling stations. And in the last election, we did accommodate the voters with specific arrangements in Shengshui polling station. We need to take into account their rights to vote, but can we make sure there are specific arrangements implemented in different districts, and we need to make sure they're accommodating arrangements, perhaps promulgating a register of mainland Hong Kong voters specifically to facilitate these voters. I so submit. Mr. Dennis Leung, Deputy President. I speak in support of the Electoral Legislation Miscellaneous Amendments Bill 2025. I was a member of the Bills Committee. I will speak on behalf of the FTU. We have to embrace technologies in the conducting of elections. That is an inevitable trend. And we had in previous elections 600 odd polling stations for the independent counting of functional constituencies. After the votes are shipped to the central counting station, there had to be manual sorting of the 70,000 odd votes, and then with manual counting we could derive the results. The process took long. It took 12 hours to complete. We also need to pay for the expenditure of staffing, and not to mention there was always a margin of error with manual processing. We will soon go digital with the legislative amendments in elections. The EAC has been will be empowered to use counting machines. It will save on manpower and relevant expenditure. It will also ensure elections will be conducted in a fair, just, honest, and open manner. I think this is appreciated by all, and the FTOU supports the relevant amendments. Apart from using counting machines, the legislative amendments also involve the revisions to the delineation of GC boundaries for the Legis general elections. We had before 450 odd DC constituencies. Now we only have 44 with the improved district governance implemented in 2023. There is no longer a linkage essentially between the Legis GCs and DC constituencies. So with the legislative amendments, we will remove the statutory connection between the Legis GCs and the DC constituencies. And on electoral arrangements, there is some streamlining as well. We have now improved arrangements that there is no longer the need for independent ballot paper accounts. The ballot paper accounts will be consolidated so that the polling stations can start the conveyance of ballot papers as soon as possible. Once the ballot papers have arrived in the central counting station, counting machines will be used. There is a contingency plan, however, if the primary counting machine does not work, we can still use the backup counting machine. If the backup counting machine fails, also, the administration would resort to manual counting. I think we have adequate contingency plans in place. We have also seen the legislative amendments improving the arrangements relating to the compilation and publication of registers of voters. It allows for the advancement of dates in specific years. That would allow for the early filling of vacancies and the updating of registers of voters so that candidates can rely on the most up-to-date register. I urge the administration to notify the relevant organizations to update the membership of election committee members as soon as possible. This information is available to the public, and right now the government has less accurate information than some organizations. I urge the government to provide the most up-to-date information to tell the good stories of Hong Kong. Before, we would engage only civil servants to act as polling staff, and they would receive about $6,000 in pay. And we have seen an increase in pay. For the ballot paper sorting station, the senior officer would have an increase in pay from $6,800 to $10,070. And in future, we would also see an increase to $12,000. It is a significant increase. We had 38,000 civil servants participating in the polling work before. It is a significant expenditure for the manpower expenditure. If we can, on the premise of protecting data privacy, make use of technologies as much as possible to save on manpower costs, that would be a significant achievement of the government. But there's always room for improvement. According to the administration, when electronic counting is used, the counting of ballot papers would have to be on the votes of all 28 FCs. And if a candidate asks for verification of results for a particular FC, it is not possible to recount the votes only in that particular FC. There has to be a recounting of all 28 FCs. That is not ideal. If we take the example of the 2021 Legis general election, if we are to count the 70,000 odd votes again, even if we are to use a counting machine, the process would take long. It also goes against our intent to enhance efficiency. So I urge the administration to have 28 separate boxes for each functional constituency. That should eliminate any need for the recounting of all 28 functional constituencies if necessary. I don't think that would go against the legislative amendments. This is just an operational improvement. I urge the administration to look into this. I understand that it may be inconvenient to increase the number of ballot boxes, but I think we can make use of smaller boxes to resolve the problem, to eliminate the need for recounting the votes of all 28 functional constituencies. Right now, votes have to be shipped to the central counting station for counting. There are some unexpected circumstances at times, and if there is loss, that is not ideal. The administration proposes now to streamline the arrangements to a certain extent so that the ballot papers would be shipped to the central counting station first and the related documents would come later. I urge the administration to make sure to enhance awareness of the public, and by enhancing public education initiatives, we should be able to achieve that. The Electoral Legislation Miscellaneous Amendments Bill 2025 has put in place multiple improvement measures and the streamlining of arrangements, as well as the arrangements for publishing registers of voters that should enhance efficiency and effectiveness of the elections. The FDU supports the relevant amendments. I hope that with the 2 elections to be held later this year, we will see the elections held smoothly. I so submit.
Ms. Judy Chan. Mr. Deputy, I support this bill. I'd like to very briefly go through my points. I've heard members speak about the importance of the ballot counting machines proposed in the bill and other potential issues. I'm not going to go through them except to say that I fully agree with them. The other point is about the objective of the amendment bill. This is in relation to the delineation of the GCs of electoral elections, and that the bill proposes to remove the connection between this delineation and the DC constituencies. This is because the original 452 DC constituencies have been merged into 44 GCs, and as a result, we need to remove the connection. The current law requires the composition of the GC by 2 or more contiguous whole DC constituencies. Now, this will be quite difficult to achieve after the merging of DC GCs. So I believe this is the right move. However, when it comes to members of the public approaching a legislator or a district councillor for help, as well as those who is engaged in community affairs, they may feel confused about this new delineation arrangement. Now, in the process of deliberations, I am happy to learn that the Secretary has heeded the views of members, and he has also noted the concerns. When circumstances permit in the future, the LCGCs and the DCGCs should be as closely aligned as possible so as not to affect the delivery of public services. Finally, I'd like to speak on the design of the system. This bill may be passed today, but it doesn't mean that the LCGC's delineation will take place immediately, because according to Section 19 of the Electoral Affairs Commission Ordinance, no amendment has been made in this regard. In other words, the Electoral Affairs Commission will need to make recommendations, and this recommendation or proposal will be put up for consultation for 30 days, and any member of the public will be able to make a claim with the EAC in relation to the preliminary proposal. I hope that the EAC will consider very carefully different proposals by then and articulate all the reasons and criteria in the delineation of LCGCs so as to avoid a repeat of previous mistakes, because there was a misconception that the EAC was not using the same yardstick. I support the bill. Mr. Johnny. Mr. Deputy, I support the Electoral Legislation Miscellaneous Amendments Bill 2025. The bill proposes to make certain revisions to make sure that the 2 elections in the 4th quarter of this year can be held smoothly. This is a demonstration of our continuous enhancement of the electoral system under the improved electoral system to ensure that we have fair, clean, safe, orderly, efficient, and impartial elections. This also showcases our commitment to the principle of patriots administering Hong Kong, and our full recognition of an implementation of one country, two systems, so that we can go full steam to improving people's livelihood and promoting economic development in this new phase of prosperity. I fully agree with the administration. I hope that this bill can be passed as quickly as possible. Now, the first amendment relates to removing the connection between the delineation of the GC boundaries for electrical GCs and DC constituencies and the districts. Now, under the improved electoral system and restructuring of district council in 2023, the number of DC constituencies have been reduced from 452 to 44, and that there is no direct connection between the electrical GCs and DCCs, and there is a need to remove this connection. The second amendment relates to greater flexibility in the ballot counting process. Having regard to the use of ballot counting machines in the previous electrical EC and EC and FC elections, the administration proposes to empower the use of ballot counting machines in the counting process for FC elections so as to enhance efficiency and shorten the time needed for ballot counting. This can also help reduce manpower and electoral expenses. I'm fully in support of this proposal. We should leverage on technology, AI, to further enhance electoral arrangements. These two elections will be held by the end of this year. The government should act quickly and enhance publicity. The government should mobilize voters to fulfill their civic duties. This is very important to ensuring the long-term implementation of one country, two systems. The government should also explain to the public the merits of the improved electoral system so as to enhance governance and public's acceptance. I believe that this year marks a very important year of Hong Kong's next phase of prosperity. Apart from the elections, we also have the upcoming national games in November. The government should mount publicity for all these three major events so as to explain to the public how important it is for the electoral general elections and to enhance the civic participation.
Mr. Brave Chen. Thank you, Mr. Deputy. My point is that as we are going from prosperity, from stability, we should be delivering for the people, and we should be striving for greater, faster, better, and more economical results. We're now at the new stage from stability to prosperity. We are making progress, and we're seeing brighter and brighter prospects. This amendment bill shows that the government is improving the quality of our elections, and we are pursuing quality democracy. We are laying down more solid foundations for our development. This also shows the government's new thinking. There is now greater flexibility, and the government is also acting with more thought for people. We want greater, faster, better results, more for less. We streamline procedures, we boost efficiency, we adopt technology. Let's keep moving ahead so that we save resources, we achieve greater cost efficiency. One highlight in the amendment bill, as other members have commented on, is the removal of the link between LCGCs and DCGCs. These two kinds of GCs still have something to do with each other, but they are no longer linked with one another the way they were. Some sort of connection between them will help enhance a sense of belonging among the people and help electoral and district council members to serve the people. We support the removal of the direct link. In the past, LCGCs were linked with DCGCs, but DCGCs and LCGCs have different focuses. District councils are for advisory services. They help the government with district governance. New features may come up in each district. So there are different factors at play when you delineate the boundaries for DCGCs and LCGCs. For LCGCs, you consider the population size. Mandating the drawing of boundaries for LC elections based on DCGCs will actually make things harder to follow for people. So what we're doing here is to enhance administrative efficiency, and we're also taking a more scientific and sensible approach to what we do. Another point we welcome is the wider adoption of technology. At the last ECC election, we used vote counting machines. We used to spend the entire night counting the ballots. Even banks are using machines to count banknotes, large value banknotes, so we should be comfortable with using counting machines for ballots. Mr. Eric Zhang, the Secretary for Constitutional and Mainland Affairs, used to be the Director of Immigration. At immigration clearance points, we also use technology. There is facial recognition here. We're doing well with the technology. So we can learn from those aspects. We're making small but rapid progress. We're taking small steps in rapid succession. We adopt technology, we will achieve greater efficiency. And that will help us ensure open and fair elections. So those are enhancements, we welcome them. One long-standing problem with ballots is that vote counting is taking too long. Some voters take the ballot away with them. And when this happens, the PRO has to seal the boxes right away, and the process is held up just because of a couple of missing ballot papers. That makes no sense. No one wants to see that. After this amendment, the ballot paper account will go to the central counting station. We can do away with the grouping of ballots. The ballots go to the counting machines right away. That's a step forward. That also shows greater flexibility, and that will lead to faster results. So there will be greater efficiency with ballot counting. Another change under this bill has to do with the register of EC sector voters. Again, we're making progress under this amendment. We lacked flexibility in this area. Say you have a by-election for the EC, you don't have the latest register of voters, so people have to fall back on the register from the year before. The information may be out of date, and people complain about inaccurate information. So with this amendment, we will see greater flexibility. Now, for those with more experience in EC elections, you will see the benefits from this change. The ERO will be able to act. Say you have electoral election and ECC election in the same year, then the election registration officer can release the register ahead of time to make sure the register available is more up to date so that it meets real needs, and we will see a more efficient process. The DAB supports these enhancements. These are targeted enhancements. In future elections, we should be taking further steps ahead so that we achieve greater success, greater quality. Let's learn from our success stories. Look at the system put in place by the Immigration Department. People have nice things to say about those systems. If we can achieve that kind of success, we will be able to achieve greater quality with elections. Dr. So Chen-Wing. Mr. Deputy, I support the Electoral Legislation Miscellaneous Amendments Bill 2025. This year, we will see the Legislative Council elections and the Election Committee constituency by-election. The bill proposes targeted amendments. These amendments are enhancements. For example, ballot counting machines for the functional constituency of the upcoming legislative elections. That will massively increase the efficiency of ballot counting, and the vote counting will be more rigorous and orderly. The changes will enhance the electoral process and safeguard voters' rights. Ballot counting machines are nothing new. At the ECC election, ballot counting machines were adopted before, and they were tried and tested. The technology is well established. Having reliable vote counting machines will lead to greater safety. In 2021, at the last legislative election, there were calls for the adoption of vote counting machines for the FC. But technical concerns meant that we had to ditch the idea. So we stuck to manual counting. But then manual counting was a complicated process, and then it took 12 hours to go through 70,000 ballots. That wasn't good enough. So we are making a change this year. We have well-established technology, and we also have experience. So it's only right that we adopt the technology this year. So let's get the risk management right and take this step. We need training for frontline officers to familiarize them with the new systems. We need officers to be familiar with the new process. We should avoid unnecessary slip-ups. And here are some things for the government to consider. Since we are bringing changes at this moment, we should run tests and get ready for the use of ballot counting machines for geographical constituencies in the future. We had machine counting for ECC, now we're doing this for FC. So we should expand the scale of adoption in the future. So let's treat the upcoming election as a large-scale drill. We set goals beforehand, and after the event, we look at what we can learn from the experience so that we can lay the foundations for the wholesale adoption of vote counting machines for all legislative elections in the future. And we should also be exploring electronic voting systems, which is adopted by many countries. Such systems are not quite commonplace yet because of cybersecurity and personal privacy issues, but technology moves by leaps and bounds, And for Hong Kong, since we want to become a smart city, electronic voting is the wave of the future. So we should be looking into this space. Let's use technology. We should use blockchain-based system with biometric verification, where we can have multiple layers of encryption and protection for the election system. Let's move with the times and prepare for the future. Finally, let's also make a greater effort to enhance voting arrangements. Let's make voting easier for people. Let's also step up publicity and guidance so that we get more people to vote and also fulfill their civic responsibility. I'm a member of the Bills Committee. I support the removal of the link between LCGCs and DCGCs in our legislation. LCGCs and DCGCs have different focuses. After the reform of the DCs, you can now see a marked contrast between the roles of Electoral and DCs. But we have to tell voters about the differences. Let's make sure people know where they vote. With this bill, we are enhancing voting procedures. But more importantly, this also shows the government is learning from experience, heeding the calls from all sectors in a continuous drive to enhance our voting procedure. This is to make sure our voting system moves with the times and also gets people to support the system. I so submit.
Mr. Shu Ka-fai, thank you. Deputy President, I was a member of the Bills Committee. On behalf of the Liberal Party, I would like to express support for the electoral legislation miscellaneous amendments bill. The country has been talking about implementing reforms, and we are very brave in reforming our existing arrangements to save resources. We have scrutinized multiple bills before, and for this particular bill, it is most important to the 80-odd Electoral members. We have 50-odd members who are returned in functional constituencies and geographical constituencies. For the 40 other members or 30-odd other members, they are already returned by electronic counting. And in general, if things end at 10-something, people would already be waiting, say at the central counting station. Like last year, we had it done in the airport. For first-timers, they would rush, but those with experience know that it would take longer. Say last time it went all the way until the next day in the morning, close to noon. And for those who have been waiting the whole time, it would be very tough. And it's not just the candidates or the campaigning teams. The polling staff, it was hard on them as well, because they need to be comply with the very strict procedures of counting. No one could leave the premises, essentially. And some had to work till the afternoon of the next day before. In the last election, I was smarter. I only went 3 in the morning. But the process didn't end until 1 or 2 in the afternoon. Unfortunately, with the use of counting machines, I believe it would definitely make the process faster. We do not have to engage as much manpower as we did before for the counting of votes. When faced with a tight fiscal position, that is definitely beneficial to the government. We had recently held the district council ordinary election, and if we are to change everything, it is still, of course, not ideal. If we can base our model on the district council election model, it should help with public understanding. It will also facilitate political parties. I speak in support of the amendments.
Does any other member wish to speak? If not, I now call upon the Secretary for Constitutional and Mainland Affairs to apply. Then the debate will come to a close. Secretary. Mr. Deputy, first of all, I thank Chairman of the Bills Committee on Electoral Legislation Miscellaneous Amendments Bill 2025, Mr. Lai Tong Kwok, Deputy Chair, Mr. Chen Yong, other members, the Secretariat, and the Electoral Legal Advisor for their hard work so that the scrutiny of this bill has been completed with smoothly and efficiently, and for the bill to receive its resumption of second reading today. I also thank members for their views and suggestions today. The decision on improving the electoral system for the Hong Kong SAR was passed with great majority at the 4th session of the 13th National People's Congress in 2021. It sets out fundamental principles and core elements of the improved electoral system of the Hong Kong SAR, the Improving Electoral System Consolidation Amendments Bill 2021 was passed in Legis and gazetted on the 31st of May 2021. It marks the full, resolute, faithful implementation of the spirit of the Patriots administering Hong Kong. In 2023, the Hong Kong SAR government further improved governance at the district level and reformed the district councils to further implement the spirit of Patriots administering Hong Kong at the district level. So far, 5 major elections have been held under the new electoral system. These elections ensured central authorities' overall jurisdiction over Hong Kong and long-term and steady implementation of one country, two systems. It also safeguards the long-term prosperity, stability in Hong Kong. Now, in the face of the U.S.'s efforts to impose tariffs indiscriminately on all trading partners, including our country and Hong Kong, which sparks disruption in the global market, the dynamics, we need to be able to respond effectively. And that means we need to stay united and uphold the spirit of Patriots administering Hong Kong to undertake resolute and effective measures and turn risks into opportunities. With this term of Legis ending on the 31st of December, we need to proceed to a new term of electoral general elections. But before that, we also need to hold by-elections for subsectors of the election committee, according to the law, to fill vacant seats to ensure that they can nominate and vote in the EC subsectors GC general elections. The object of the bill is to put forward certain amendments to ensure that these 2 elections can be held smoothly. It also reflects the SAR government's commitment in enhancing electoral arrangements with a view to further seek progress whilst maintain stability under the new improved electoral system. There are 3 major amendments. First, the current laws require the LCGCs to be composed of contiguous and whole DC constituencies. However, after improvement of the electoral system in 2021 and improved district governance and restructuring of the district councils in 2023, there is no rigid connection between the LCGCs and the DCCs. We propose to remove this connection to reflect the actual situation and to provide flexibility for the delineation. Second, drawing on the successful experience of the use of ballot counting machines in previous elections, the government empowers the EAC Electoral Affairs Commission to use ballot counting machines for counting ballots in the Electoral FC elections so as to enhance ballot counting efficiency and to save manpower, costs, and expenses. We also propose to enhance the ballot paper accounts arrangements. Post-polling preparation at the polling station will be streamlined so that ballot boxes can be transferred to the central counting station for ballot counting to further enhance efficiency and shorten counting time. The third amendment relates to the use of the latest voter registration by EC subsector in the by-elections. Now, the bill proposes empowering the ERO to compress and expedite certain work processes so as to suitably advance the date of publishing the final register before the by-elections. These three proposed amendments have been supported by the members of the Bills Committee. The Bills Committee is also conducted in-depth deliberations on the details of the bill. Members have put forward some invaluable views, and may I take this occasion to respond succinctly to some of these concerns raised by members. Now, in terms of removing the connection between LC geographical constituencies and district council constituencies, there are suggestions that these two delineation systems should be maintained consistent as far as possible. We note the view and will continue to communicate fully with the EAC. We believe that in the future delineation work of the EAC, this suggestion will be taken on board as far as practicable. In relation to the reliability and operational details of the ballot counting machines, the relevant technology is actually quite mature. The EAC has also successfully used the ballot counting machines in the previous ECSS elections and the LC EZ elections. Riding on the success, the government will continue to work closely with the EAC, and only experienced and reputable contractor will be engaged for the development and supply of the relevant system for this year's election. There will also be rigorous tests on the system. There will also be a contingency plan, including sufficient backup machines and resorting to manual counting if necessary. The REO will also conduct a number of simulation tests to ensure that the ballot counting process will not be affected in the event of any malfunctioning of the system, since a backup plan will be available. Now, in relation to requests for recounting of ballots, the returning officer will consider the actual circumstances and the statutory requirements in acceding to the request. As for the way of recounting, unless there is a reasonable ground to support using another method for recounting, for example, if there is anything wrong with the ballot counting machine leading to an error, we will recount the ballots with ballot counting machines in the same way. The returning officer will make suitable judgment depending on the circumstances. At the moment, the counting of GC ballots are done in a decentralized manner in over 600 polling stations instead of a centralized counting model adopted by the Election Committee or FC's elections. There are different considerations, for example, whether there are sufficient number of counting machines and also technical support. The government will continue to seek progress whilst maintaining stability, drawing on the actual experience and availability of the technology. The government will further consider using the ballot counting machine for ballot counting in other elections. President, the SAL government has continued to abide by the spirit of seeking progress whilst maintaining stability stability to improve the electoral arrangements to ensure that elections are conducted in a fair, impartial, clean, honest, safe, and efficient manner. We also have regard to the actual circumstances and needs to further keep our election work abreast of the times to showcase the merit of the new system. I move the resumption of second reading of the electoral legislation miscellaneous amendments bill 2015. I urge members to support the bill, and I will be moving amendment.
And I'll put the question to you that the electoral legislation miscellaneous amendments bill 2025 be read the second time. With those in favor, please raise their hands. Those against, please raise their hands. I think the question is agreed by a majority of the members present. I declare the motion passed. Electoral legislation miscellaneous amendments bill 2025. This council now becomes